Hello, my young friend. I am playing around still with the settings, so I'm now messed a bit with the volume on the microphone and turn the gain right down, see if I can cut out the noise of the, well, I'm in the living room, so we're going to hear the fridge and a number of other things and likely a kitten or two, but anyway, I will be quiet now so you can set your base. Well, hello, my constant listeners, and hello, my semi-listeners, and a very warm welcome to my very first listeners. I am bringing to you a thought or discussion or some insights into the age-old, bummer of why can't I see anything? And I do hear that quite often from individuals, and I know that it is very frustrating. It can be a very frustrating part to encouraging you to maintain it and just keep coming back to it if you're not going to see anything. So I encounter this question and this comment very regularly. One of the first things I say is to have patience and compassion for yourself. We live in a world immersed with the high value of now. Everything must be now. Our tap, in some countries we have the ability to tap a debit card and whoosh, the payment goes through. Or we have the ability to whoosh, email to individuals. I remember when cash had to be everything, checks had to clear, same as many of my constant listeners, and possibly even everyone else in between. Shamanic journeys can be very challenging, and it can be very hard to quiet the endless procession of thoughts, grocery lists, fears. Anytime we enter into a realm we are unfamiliar with, we are likely to encounter resistance in one form or another. When minds can't find things, so you can't see anything, often what happens is that the random brain or the brain will engage in random thoughts. I'll give you an example. A desert ant that can't find its nest starts to hunt randomly. So when we get stuck on a problem we can't solve, our minds will generate a scenario or think back to an experience which may be similar as a means of attempting to solve the problem. If we're stuck in analysis, it is very hard to continue with the experience. If your mind is a non-stop hamster wheel, it will be more challenging for you to quiet the mind. It is not always necessary to stop the mental chatter, because sometimes in our journeys we have that extra challenge or that bonus, depending on how you view it, of standing between the worlds at the same time. So you are just as much aware, you could be just as much aware of the power animal or the spirit kin you're interacting with as you are aware of the hard floor or the cushion or the pillow or whatever that you're laying on top of. You do have the ability to ease into relationship with the constant chatter of the mind and tune that chatter out. With any type of trance, especially with shamanic journeying, you do have to learn to tune out what is going on in the room you are journeying in and to tune into the world of the journey you are experiencing. So again, we're stepping out of the analytical and we're moving into the experiential. And sometimes when you're tuning out what is happening back in the room, so to speak, you can also tune out your mental chatter. Now, I know that my constant listeners are familiar with this strategy. However, I'm going to offer it again because this can be one of the challenges for not being able to see anything or not experience anything, is that wonderful, critical, skeptical voice. What I like to do is create a very comfortable chair at the entrance to the spirit world, or that threshold from this place to that place. And I tell the critic or the nonstop chatter mind that you are welcome to sit in this chair. I'm going to go on with my journey, and when I come back, you're welcome. I will pick you up, and you're welcome to tell me all of how much it meant nothing as you were journeying, or as you were moving, as I was moving through the spirit world. That is one technique that I have recommended, and I have had very positive feedback with it through the years. So it may be something that just might work for you. And one of the benefits of the shamanic journey is that it engages both the right and the left hemisphere. The right is in that mystical sight mode, and the left is in recording and analyzing. The trick is to learn to balance so that one side or the other side of the brain doesn't necessarily have full grasp or full connection or full control of the entire experience. However, if you are a very grounded human being who is not very versed or very familiar with your own mystical sight, then perhaps it is positive for you to disregard or to turn off the left side of the brain and be able to experience that mystical and shut off the analytical mind. But as we move deeper into this work, we will realize that there has a good relationship, a good balance that is going to be built into it. So oftentimes the analyzing can be a huge stumbling block for the new experiencer and can still trip up a skilled experiencer. I think the reason your ears are listening to my voice is you may have been, or still are, or have for as long as you can remember, searched for a meaning. Much like our ancestors, likely since we created the very first bead, signifying symbolically that we are separate from. So now we are in this place in our psyche of searching for something different, searching for meaning. So our ancestors who have been pondering the exploration of soul and self for thousands of years have left evidence of this. So they're pondering the exploration of the soul, and in that regard have left countless artifacts in the form of artwork on caves, artwork on pottery, artwork in tattoos, the ancient and amazing altars that have been left behind, not to mention the sculptures, the giving face and features to the ineffable, the unknowable, evidence as well as the burial mounds. These just name a few of this relationship that our ancestors were creating between the world of the mundane and the world of the sacred, and trying to come to terms with the ever-evolving separation of the one and moving into the relationship of self or tribe or family. So darkness in a journey is one signal that you are trying to understand a problem or a new experience. So you are truly confronting your psyche's version of reality. The sensations, the knowing, and the insights, they really can appear random. However, taking a step back and a step up and viewing it from that perspective, we may be able to begin to see that what is random is actually rife with meaningful interpretations. My experience with the shamanic state of consciousness, with the trance state, to journeying, whatever you want to call it, it has worked to reorganize my own natural biases. And this is by the continual pushing of my boundaries. So I'm being forced to consider alternative views and interpretations of reality. And sometimes this can lead to new insights. It often leads to new insights. But in the meantime, the destruction or the crackling or the breaking apart of the foundation of self, or how you organize the world or how you created the world, can falter and fumble. And that can be very hard to put back together, very hard to find your footing. And I think sometimes our souls are afraid of that unknown journey, that alternative view, that shaking of reality, and will leave darkness. And I'm going to cross into some of the aspects of personality that may hinder a seeker. I think in order to remind you of patience and compassion for yourself, my ancestors, some of the tribes that were amongst the Sami people, their Nawadi, their shaman, could apprentice their entire lives, where there were shorter initiations and shorter apprentices, maybe of a few years. They knew, and I tell you now, dipping out of conscious into this personal subconscious and even further slipping into the collective unconscious takes practice. Now there's this funny word, perception. The word perception, when describing something internal or external, is really connected to the visual receptors only. We are a visual dominated culture, and we organize the majority of our life in visual receptor displays, whether it's through files, through folders, through apps, through collections of books, to alphabetizing your spices, right? Perception is much deeper than visual input. Our perception is only as perceptive as we are in determining what is, and insert your own baggage here, and how perceptive are we, and how does that, whatever's influencing you, how does that, or how can that influence how I interpret what I have experienced, or how can the lenses through which I see the world, because that's my synopsis, that's my viewpoint, how then can I challenge my interpretation of what I've experienced? To perceive, we use all of our senses. I don't know why I'm saying insensitive. To perceive, we must do it with all of our insensitivities. Well, I guess if that's a slip of the tongue, I need to explore that. So if we're perceiving through our insensitivities, even the word insensitive, so not sensitive to, turned away from, and salacious in our relationship with. So insensitive to perceptions, meaning I would take that to mean that I'm instinct injured, and therefore I have normalized the abnormal and I've abnormalized the normal. So if I'm insensitive to my own perceptions, then I am also therefore blind to my own perceptions. It takes time to recognize where our blind spots are. That's some of the benefits of working within Circle, working with friends if you're taking an online course, to tap into the other students in the class. It helps us to shift our boundaries a little better if we also can understand how some others are shifting their boundaries. The more intensive the perception is, the more present you are. So let me say that again. The more intense the perception, the more present you are. So the brighter, the louder, the more intensely you felt the emotion, the more present you are in the spirit world. Even if all you experience is darkness for now, keep in mind there are no limitations on how you travel. I will ask you to keep some of these questions in mind. Can you access your physical self during a journey? Do you feel temperature changes or sensations in your body such as denseness, heaviness, lightness, tingling, an anxiety response? When we talk about moving down into the lower world, sometimes that can be, even in and of itself, that concept of going down through the threshold, moving down into darkness is somewhat intimidating. We fail to remember that the way down will end at some point. And that being said, I have had to dig my way in total darkness, trying to get into the lower world during the journey. What I should have done, instead of working so hard, is give myself permission to go back up to my anchor spot and see if there's a new opening. Maybe the subtlety of the message, or the not so subtle message, is, why do you always take the hard way? Move back up and see if we've provided you with an easier way. At times, if I'm in darkness, when you're walking through your house or your apartment or someone else's and it's dark, and you kind of slip your feet out in front of you to see whether or not you're going to trip into the coffee table, the footstool, whatever it may be. In the spirit world, if I cannot see, I try to be perceptive to the very subtle shifts that occur around me. At times it may feel like the wind or the air is pushing back against me. And at other times I encounter webs or an entanglement of what feel like roots in my way. Over the years, I have accrued a number of tools that I generally have on me at all times. Have you considered taking tools with you or having them present when you enter into the sacred space? Sometimes we leave logic at the very first sound of the drum beat, and some of the tips are from other beginners. If in darkness, perhaps you can reach out and turn on a light switch. Perhaps you have a flashlight with you, or perhaps you have a good old-fashioned torch. One of the ways that I have been able to use my healing hands is I turn on my healing hands and I can light up the space simply by the light of the divine shining through my hands. There are many different ways to attempt to catch a glimpse of your spirit world. Have you tried some of the logical approaches to lighting the darkness? And if you have, perhaps there truly is a door blocking your view. And if your view is blocked, you cannot see anything. If there's, perhaps you can reach down and put your hand along whatever seems to be blocking your way. And can you find a door handle? And will that door handle work? Can you knock however many times is important to you on that solid object that stops you from being in this world to that world? Or perhaps it is as simple as reaching up and taking the blindfold off your eyes that you didn't know was there. It can take more than one approach to bring light to the darkness. What happens when we travel in this sacred way, it enables us to make clear a part of our mind that is often hidden and often even more challenging to interpret. We are experiencing challenges with journey, so keep in mind you are attempting to make clear the often confusing, mystical-like symbols that lurk just quietly below your present understanding of reality. Your mind is the place where meaning evolves. Your skills increase through time, and you will have a better means of understanding your journeys, your insights, those aha moments, and sometimes you might even get a God shot moment. I get stuck is another frustrating obstacle to work with. In logical brain, if you're stuck, the first impulse would be to look down and find the reason why your feet won't move on. In some of my guided meditations, I ask participants to look down and to see what they're walking on. I also ask them to pay attention to any other sounds or smells. How does the air feel on the skin? All of these questions are equally important to ask when you're experiencing difficulties with journeys. And even if you have been at it for a very long time, sometimes we become blind or insensitive to our perceptions. If we are used to them as our travel companions, we take them for granted. What is available to your senses, if your primary way of processing the world around you is removed? So what is available to you if you can't see? Do the clairs apply to you? The clairsentience, the clairaudience, the clairvoyance, do those apply to you? Life is experienced through as many filters as there are humans to perceive them. One technique you can use, and a friend or your drumming circle, should you be so lucky to be a part of one, is to try journeying together to the exact same target in the exact same room. And then listen to the differences of each person reporting back. Everyone sees and reacts differently to the environment they are in. Each of us has to process our experience through our own personal filters. At times, expectations or doubts are so huge that all other movements are inhibited. You're literally standing in your own way. Skepticism, too, although very healthy, can be a joy sucker. We cannot always escape our cultural, social, and educational biases. It is not as simple as, look, this is real, so just get over yourself and everything will become clearer. It really isn't as simple as all that for some people. The psyche can be very elusive to engage. And perhaps you are a human who predominantly perceives your world by hearing things or sensing things. I encourage you not to give up just because you don't see anything. Have you ever experienced, and then I ended up here and I don't have a clue how I got there? There are often leaps between scenes. This is common, especially when in light trance, and is completely normal and is more often confusing than problematic. As I spend more time in the spirit world, I jump unconsciously between scenes less and less. It can and does still happen. However, now I just see it as spirit hurrying me along. Our minds often wander. Don't chastise yourself for that. Take a breath, come back into the room, tune back into the drum, and remember to start at the last place you remember being in, the beginning. In the beginning of anything, that vision is often unclear. The first journeys may well feel like they were just imagined. That is perfectly normal and perfectly expected. Nobody is a master, and journey work takes practice. Learning how to interpret what you see takes practice. You can ask different people to interpret your journey for you, and perhaps they can give you some crucial insights, but no one can truly interpret your experience because no one was there with you. I personally have accidentally stumbled on meanings of journeys by randomly reading something that was related, whether in obscure fashion or directly related. At other times, dawning of awareness or dawning of realization comes upon me when I'm writing out my journey, accessing the left brain to put words and interpretations on the symbols and the visions that I have had. There are other times when you are welcome to go back to the journey and ask questions about it. Or if you have a particular vision in mind and you have a spirit or a teacher that you have worked with, take that question or that image or that confusion to the spirit world and ensure that they have knowledge for you. So take it back into the spirit world and see if anybody has an answer for you. Do you understand this? Do you know what I'm supposed to make of this? Sometimes that helps. At the beginning of your exploration of any spiritual path, one of the things that sets your foot on any spiritual path is generally that you are seeking answers. We perceive as we have been taught. So at first we perceive in the most basic of ways. A mother may mean just that, your mother. And later upon reflection, there may be the relationship between the mother in your journey and the archetypal mother in the collective unconscious. Perception is not just visual, but it encompasses perceiving from different senses and different angles. We often have enthusiasm at the beginning of a path, and we can often put aside a path or a journey because it feels as though we're not getting anywhere. You may be trying this, that, or the other thing, and you're not going anywhere. There are times when our spirits do test us. There have been times in my years on this path where my journeys have gone completely dark, where I would be experiencing months of over-the-top, wonderful, mystical, deeply symbolic journeys, followed by a period of time once lasting 6 months where I wasn't able to see anything. It was just darkness, darkness, darkness. And I persevered. I didn't give up. And when I was finally able to break through and to have a conversation with the teacher that was available to me in the spirit world at the time, I asked what this particular length of blindness or darkness, what it could possibly mean. And my spirits indicated to me that what was going on was that they were testing my resolve or testing my strength to continue journeying on. Everyone is unique and in turn makes sense of the spirit world in their very own unique way. And through time, we either add to or we create our own personal mythology. Think about the different power animals that you have either experienced yourself or you have read or heard about other people experiencing. When you read different, journeys or bibliographies, for lack of a better word, of experiences in the relating or in the actual spirit world itself, you'll notice that there are relationships with build-up, there are relationships that are created, and this is a creating of your own personal mythology. This is the creation of the relationships you have with spirit. It takes time to get to know a teacher's spirit, and it also takes time for the spirits to get to know you. Oftentimes we make many mistakes when we journey, whether we lose our cool in the spirit world because things aren't going our way, or maybe we haven't been diligent or doing the practice that spirit has requested we do. Perhaps it's a daily discipline. Perhaps you've been asked to perform this service or that service. And I think what is important is to recognize that it is part of your own story to have to struggle and to have to sacrifice. It is part of your own story to have to make sense of the spirit world in your own very unique way. In time, I was able to draw maps of my spirit world. So in the north was this, in the south was this, as a means of creating and understanding the geography of where I generally traveled. And the geography can be, or doesn't necessarily have to be, related to my own personal mythology or my own spirits. There are times when I have traveled on behalf of others and ended up in places that were not at all part of my spiritual reality. Take a note of that as well. If you are having a challenge journeying for yourself, if you're in an online group, or if you know someone very similar to you, journey on behalf of each other. It is a gift from Spirit to know that, or a gift to Spirit to know that you are willing to sacrifice your own time in order to help somebody else. And they will generally bend over backwards to try to enable you to have a journey, to grab a word that is meaningful, to deliver a message. So if we are willing to sacrifice our own time and our own internal search and help another person, that can help us also with our journeys. We're going to make mistakes as we create our relationships with Spirit. We're going to say some things likely that are not acceptable once we get past that veneer of politeness. Although I've met many people who don't have much respect or reverence for the spirit world. And that is their own personal journey. How you relate to the spirit world truly is your own journey. It's not mine. It's also not mine to judge. In drawing maps of the spirit world and in understanding the geography, this helped me know kind of where I generally traveled. And there are places in those old maps where my sight was not at all useful. There were places in my spirit world that were always dark. I don't draw maps anymore, but what I do often is I'll start off in my anchor spot and I will do a 360-degree turn so that I can view and inventory in my own way the landscape around me. The landscape for me in my anchor spot really does shift over time. I've talked about that in other journeys. I've talked about that in other podcasts, how those things change. And for me, it indicates when I have moved and when I'm in the process of moving from one place on the medicine wheel to another place. The landscape does go through shifts and changes over the years. And it is a direct reflection of how my views and my perceptions have also shifted. The landscape of the spirit world is hardly ever the exact same twice. How I get somewhere, the spirits which help me get from one place to another place may all be very identical and may all be very connected to me. Symbols and locations such as the world tree, the entrance to the land of the dead, the river that separates the twilight and the dead, the cave of lost children, these are, there's the cosmic world mountain as well. These are all examples of permanent locations in the spirit world. These are all examples of symbols that have remained so steadfast through the generations, the thousands and thousands and thousands of years that the collective unconscious has been growing and providing us with insights and images. So there are aspects of the spirit world, the aspects of that collective unconscious that already are fully engaged. Always keep in mind that the places you travel to are not uninhabited. The spirit world, again, I remind you, it runs completely independent of you. And this place is definitely not made of sunshine wishes and candy cane kisses. Rather, this place is the origin of many myths and the beings who populate them. So why can't you see? Sometimes we stand in our own way. And there are other times, and I say this at the end of the podcast because it deserves to be mentioned. In the years that I ran the drumming circle, there were two very dedicated souls who came to many of the drumming circles. And one person had one image once, and very rarely had images after, a very fleeting, minute images. And another person never could shut down the monkey mind and settle down and move into a journey. And those are personalities. One personality I didn't know how to interpret, and another personality, the one who could not ever stop the going on of the mental mind, never surprised me. I think that there is also a willingness to go deep, but there's also a willingness as to how deep we can go. It is not a judgment call, it is merely an acknowledgement. Wherever you are on the journey, I wish you strength to continue. Whether you've been at it for your very first time listening to anything about shamanism is today, or to those of us who have been practicing for many, many years. Just because we have a relationship or a burgeoning relationship doesn't mean it's a predictable relationship. And because it isn't a predictable relationship, we are still given the opportunity to be surprised. We are still given the opportunity to be less encumbered by our expectations and our preconceived notions of how this fits into that and how that will create an image for this. I wish you the best, and I look forward to the next time that we can meet around the stereo speakers, the earphones, the whatever method you listen to it, and this microphone which I record. And thank you for giving me your attention, your time, and for your very kind wisdom and your very kind patience with this information. Until we meet again, have a good night, have a good day, have a good morning, wherever you are.